Hello, and welcome to this episode of Experience Matters, our series covering customer experience and employee experience and everything in between, and the roles that both CX and EX play in organization success. Our discussion today will center on enterprise customer experience, exploring how enterprise-wide CX automation can not only enhance operational efficiency and drive strategic initiatives, but it can also be a significant competitive differentiator. As part of this conversation, we're going to explore Verint's evolution beyond the contact center and the bigger story here. And I'm joined today by Samantha McDougall, who's the GVP and GM Voice of Customer Solutions, for what I know will be a fantastic conversation. Welcome, Sam. I'm so glad to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here, Shelly.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to set the stage here a bit, customer experience is the thing that all organizations need to get right. CX directly impacts customer loyalty, business growth, and competitive differentiation in today's market. A strong CX strategy and execution delivers big bottom line business value, and not the least of which is driving customer satisfaction, retention, revenue, and helping turn customers into loyal brand advocates. Research shows that companies prioritizing CX experience not only higher revenue growth and retention rates, but that serving up superior customer experiences can also reduce costs, boost operational efficiency, and create better employee experiences in the process. And all of that is a huge win, right? So, but the challenge here is that delivering on the CX front is one of the biggest challenges facing organizations today. Maximizing customer engagement, increasing revenue, and all the while delivering outstanding customer experiences across all channels while also keeping costs in line is no easy task. But that's where I get excited, because customer analytics solutions in analytics that help measure customer engagement can really help. They are helping drive significant enterprise-wide value, and that's what Sam and I are going to talk about today. So Sam, are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. So start us off, if you would, by sharing a bit about your career backstory and kind of the journey that you've been on so far.
And I'm happy to do just that. And, I think a lot of us think of the start of our career as something that's perhaps highly organized and thought out. And that wasn't the case in my case. And so a lucky twist for me, or a lucky bend for me, in that I really hadn't planned out what it was that I wanted to do post university. And had the amazing opportunity to join a angel investing firm that was, investing in emerging technology in the startup world. Right. And really, what I loved about that, and what I continue to love today, is the opportunity to use innovation and technology to deliver different business in a different way, different business outcomes. And really that's stayed with me today. So, from the startup world, I ended up joining a digital agency. And when we, at the time, digital agency was really tasked with finding a voice for brands online. This was, a major shift in the business model. And so being able to capitalize on, this new set of opportunities that the internet brought forth to these organizations was a big thing. And so really our role was define digital transformation strategies, define how the brand would live and breathe online, and bring all of that together with the existing assets that brand would have in the physical world most of the time.
Yeah.
So from digital agency through an acquisition, once again, a bit of an interesting twist, ended up in a telco. We were their largest. They were our largest client, and so therefore they acquired us, and we externalized the offer, the digital agency offer, out to their client base. I had, once again, a pretty unique opportunity at that point, which was I was offered to take on the contact center offer and the responsibilities, not only go to market, but delivering it in the space for customers. And that led me to co-lead, along with another woman within the organization, a customer experience consulting offer. And so really, once again, there was this notion of what can I do with my mobile applications? What am I doing on the web? And how do contact centers and physical locations fit into this ecosystem that the brands have? And so that was really the pivotal point for me in terms of how I ended up in customer experience. So fast forward to today, and really I'm here to help organizations in today's context understand the data that they have at their fingertips and how that can inform experiences and the design around experiences. So that gives you a little bit of an overview of sort of my career trajectory, if you will.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, my journey is not too dissimilar, and it's interesting when you think about digital transformation. When we started doing it in those early days, it was migrating to the web and really understanding the huge role that the web is going to play in business and in life, right? And then you had another transformative movement when you had cloud computing and all of the change and the transformation that brought, that we're still going through. And now you've got the advent of artificial intelligence, and that's a whole nother transformation. And the thing that I always try to tell the clients that I work with, that this is a journey that is a never-ending journey. You're never done. So strap on, get used to change, and it'll all work out. But it's definitely been an interesting journey and continues to be an interesting journey. So I'm with you there. Absolutely. All right. So I mentioned in the intro that delivering on that customer experience front is no small challenge for customers today. What do you see? You're in the trenches working with customers, working with prospects on a daily basis. What do you see as the biggest barriers to getting CX right, Sam?
Yeah, I think there are multiple elements that are, I'll say, challenges for organizations today. Not that they're not overcomable, because they very much are, but we still see an oversized set of companies that are still have data in silos, and the quality of that data is not great in pockets of the organization. And the reason that that's a challenge, it's always been a challenge, because we want to understand what's in that data. We want to understand those experiences. We want to take those experiences out and then ensure that we're creating a strategy that improves the experiences for the end consumer, so that the organization can also improve alongside of it, right? But fast forward to today, and you just mentioned it, we're in another change cycle, and this notion of the power of AI really is tied to the data and the availability of the data. And so I'd say that is one of the biggest challenges out there. And that's because customers are now, and this has been a continuation of over the years of the number of channels we have, and this rising expectation that changes all the time around where you're going to be met in the channel and how that experience is going to be for that customer. So the two are hand in hand: rising expectations around getting it right across the channels, understanding what's happening in the channels, and then personalizing the experience, which is all tied to the data in many ways, right? So I think those are elements that are keeping people up at night right now when they think about, how am I going to deliver best of breed around VOC programs, around CX experiences.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it is the data is not a new thing, Sam. I mean, data has been around for a very long time, but the biggest challenge I think that we have today is that you can't use AI effectively without really having your arms around data, and that data can't be siloed, and it's got to be quality data. And so that's the challenge that I find on a regular basis, is that getting structured and unstructured data, managing access, and getting the context around all of that is really something that a lot of organizations are highly focused on. And the other thing that I think that I was thinking about when you were talking about the cross-channel thing, I had my own nightmare customer experience yesterday, and I wanted to return something. And of course, I mean, I never buy anything without checking a return policy. I know exactly, and before I go to the process, I go back and check the return policy and I follow all the rules. And, in this particular instance, you had to send an email. So I sent an email, no response. 5 emails later, I still haven't gotten a response. I'm very irritated. I'm very frustrated. I'm also aware of there's some time restrictions that the brand has imposed in terms of being able to return something. So then you're obviously not going to answer me by way of email. So then I go to chat, and I was literally in chat yesterday for an hour and a half trying to resolve. All I needed to do is return something, following every bit of the standard rules that they publish and everything else. And I was so frustrated. And at the end of an hour and a half, I got half of my problem solved, but not my full problem solved. And so I just thought, you know what, I just can't deal with this anymore today. I've got to take a break. And sometime later in the day, I happened to pop over to Facebook and just randomly spent 5 minutes there. But during that time, I saw an ad for this same brand. And I was still so irritated that what I posted as a comment on this brand is like, buyers beware. Like, please don't buy anything that the customer experience is terrible. The return process is terrible. I mean, there's so many barriers to satisfaction. It's just save yourself the trouble. Very quickly, someone reached out from their social team. Now, I will say this: they were very, very nice. By the way, I'm the customer that saves every bit of my chat history. So, it's not a he said, she said thing. I had it. And anyway, but my point is that customers will find you. And we want to be served. And we, and really what we're looking for is we're looking to know that you value us and that you value the spend that we make with you and the trust that we have in you. And so that's, I think, really where that voice of the customer experience is so, so very important, because one bad experience, and you've got somebody like me talking about not buying something from the brand Halara because it's a nightmare. And you can also, I mean, you're immersed in the CX space. I'm immersed in the CX space. And it's widely known that a lot of brands, kind of put things in place to get customers so frustrated with the experience that they just walk away, whether it's dropping calls or chats or whatever. And it's just, it's so frustrating from a customer standpoint that people remember this, and people will share their bad experiences, and you really want to kind of avoid that when you can. So, all right. So now that we've got some background, Sam, let's tackle a really big topic right off the bat. And so when people talk about Verint, they often think contact center, and that's it. But there's so much more to the Verint story than simply contact center. And I know that some of that story starts with Verint's acquisition of a survey company a little more than a decade ago. And I know this because you and I talked about this recently. So would you share with me a little bit about why that's so significant?
Absolutely. And great observation. So I think, Verint had a North Star that drove the strategy, the acquisition of a survey solution many, many years ago. And that was that experience was going to be central to not only effective operations and understanding, those precursors to what becomes a phone call into the call center. Right. And you just described it, Shelly. While today we talk about, chat and call and email, these are all elements that could be, precursors to that call into the call center.
Right.
So they had the forward-thinking vision to say, this is going to be central to the way in which operations can drive efficiency, can better understand what it is that's happening in the larger ecosystem. And so that was, obviously very central to the vision. But it also recognized that experience would be a competitive differentiator.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really that combination that's led Verint to think about, moving out of the contact center, moving into the CX automation space, and understanding sort of two tracks. One is, how do I infuse experience throughout the journey? And then how do I understand the interactions and the ways in which we can, in understanding the interactions, start creating cohesion along the journey. And that, that took a lot of, this wasn't a journey in one step. There were many steps before we got to the point where we could actually automate and look at next steps in the journey. So that's sort of a little bit of the background. And today, when we think about CX automation, we're thinking about not only VOC, not only the journeys, we're thinking about how do we tool, what kind of solutions do we have to help on the digital journey in self-service, because you just talked about your journey starting in self-service and getting into an assisted service or into a contact center setting. So that's a little bit about where Verint is, had some forethought in terms of thinking about that experience piece.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about this before, but it's kind of affording visibility where visibility is limited. And VOC provides those insights and feedback that really are driving a shift from, contact center and Verint being viewed as contact center people to being utilized as really an enterprise-wide CX automation platform. And I think that's important. I think that that's something that Verint doesn't get enough recognition for, and that's an important part of the company's overall value prop.
And you hit on, a really important part, which was visibility, and that is, I think that's changed over the years. There was a period of time where VOC practitioners were thinking about the collection, understanding, what they were getting from a survey, and taking that, and then, setting some priorities for the organization and moving through that. Right. What has happened now, because of AI, because of the advance in analytics, is the visibility can be, we're eliminating blind spots, right, and we're able to understand it much faster than we were. So, in real time, that's game changing. So I'm glad you brought up the visibility part. We've come a long way in creating visibility.
I think that's a really important part of this overall equation for sure. So, Sam, let's talk more about Verint's voice of the customer analytics solutions. I know that you've augmented these VOC solutions with engagement analytics. Why does this matter, and how are you doing that?
Yeah, great question. So, as we continue to see the market evolve, and when I say the market evolve, that also means our customers coming to us and the space very well, asking for this next modern version of VOC programs. And so, the complexity that brands have when they think about delivering on the experiences on this unified journey it's complex, right? And in VOC programs, you'll always have survey as the center point, as far as I'm concerned, and it allows us to tool ourselves into, really dig into questions that we want answered and go a couple of layers deeper. But what we've learned as well, and when we talk about VOC analytics, is that there is a series of data that surrounds not only the survey, but the interactions that individuals, consumers are having with the brand. And it's getting at that unstructured, so we look at it two ways. It's getting at that unstructured data, and really that's the open-ended data. It could be an open text field in a survey. It could be a chat interaction. You mentioned one earlier on that you had with the organization for an hour and a half. So, there'd be a lot of data in that. It could also be a conversation in the contact center. There are many other examples where we can collect data, but that's the unstructured data that we couldn't make sense of. Now, we've been in this space for a long time in terms of analyzing unstructured data. So, we've come a long way, and we're doing, the industry itself is doing some pretty fantastic things with unstructured data. What is really exciting as well, as far as I'm concerned, is that we also, and it's more recent, have been able to understand behavioral data. And so this is a sentiment in a chat. This could be intent, in an intelligent virtual agent interaction. It could be clicking through on a website, right? So now we've got behavioral data. And so when you think about it, we're now in the aggregate, we're capturing these signals that come from, that come from all the different elements that I just went through. And we are able to, in capturing those behavioral data points, that unstructured data, and that direct feedback from surveys, we're now able to understand a much broader set of what that experience is, right? And so the context is just exploded, and it sort of leads to the next point, which is that we're seeing in the marketplace the desire to move into the action layer, right? Customers want us to help them in real time. They want us to have us direct them through their self-service journey, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really, when we think about automating tasks or closing the loop, or going so far as really orchestrating personalized journeys, all of that is possible because of the power of the analytics, the AI. And I pointed to two key areas where that's very true today. So I hope that helps situate a little bit.
No, I think it's great. And, as you were talking about this, I was thinking about, to take my customer experience situation from yesterday. And first of all, I think it bears saying that there is not one human being on the planet who ever wakes up and says, I cannot wait to reach out to a customer service agent today to solve the problem that I'm having, right? We always want to be able to take care of things ourselves. And so, it's so important for brands to understand that and to facilitate that. But, I express who is on a chat for an hour and a half? Quite frankly, I can't even believe that the same person that I was talking to, the same person for all this time, that they didn't disconnect me, because that was amazing. But in retrospect, and what behavioral analytics can do is, can go back and parse through that customer conversation with me, look at how the agent responded. And in some ways, she just wasn't answering all of my questions. And I was trying to be very particular to make sure that I could do things exactly as required, because again, it's a return item, right? And so if I don't follow the rules, I don't get my money back. And so the behavioral analytics can indicate this customer was incredibly irate, and can also help you determine what happened on the part of the agent that led to my extreme dissatisfaction, and then solve it moving forward. So that is kind of like a real world example of why this is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the human aspect of it that is infused into the way that we're thinking about technology, right? We are thinking about the sentiment of the individual who's having that difficulty. And we're looking as organizations, back to what I was saying at the opening, innovation in itself is fine, but innovation linked to better delivering from a business perspective is key to the way in which you keep loyalty with your customer base, and therefore you retain, you sell new, you drive the business metrics that we all look at, on a regular basis and want to achieve. So the human component of this, being able to get closer to behavioral data, and to do that at scale, right? This isn't done, in small pockets. It really is done at scale, which once again, at the aggregate, really redefines the way in which we can think about designing experiences. So
absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, Sam, what a brand wants and what a customer wants are really the exact same things, right? The brand wants to solve a customer's problem as efficiently and effectively as possible, and as quickly as possible. The customer wants the exact same thing. So when we can use the technology that's available to us to do that, it's a huge win all the way around.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Sam. So from what I know about these solutions that we're talking about, they're designed to provide organizations with the ability to deliver that consistent, contextual, personalized customer experiences we've been talking about. But don't they also provide some insight that helps enhance things like enterprise performance, customer and employee. We've been talking a lot about customer engagement, but what about customer and employee engagement, and then working to drive customer loyalty? Why does this matter so much?
Well, that's another great question, Shelly. And, we haven't talked about voice of the employee yet, but it is such a critical component. When we talk to our customers, we talk to them about embedding voice of the employee into their larger reflection around voice of the customer.
Right.
And the reason is that being able to tap into the power of your frontline employees is critical, right? We know that if we can harness better employee satisfaction, because the data shows us this, that we can drive better customer experiences.
Sure.
And back to this human piece, we know that at whatever level it is, there is this component of being attached to the human experience when we're having experiences. And so being able to understand employee satisfaction becomes critical to a successful voice of the customer program. It's big impact, right? We also know that it shows up in the revenue, right? We say that a point improvement in NPS is about $3 per customer is what the value is to the organization. So
it's a big impact.
Huge impact, right?
Yeah.
And it's back to what you talked about a little bit earlier, which is loyalty, right?
Yeah.
If you lose a customer, we all know that that's a very expensive proposition, one that not only bears out in that customer, but in the word of mouth that they will have with their entourage, right, if you will.
Right.
So that's for us at Verint, when we, as I said, we certainly prescribe that there be a voice of the employee program. We have predictive models as well that help you understand what the impact is going to be with regards to voice of the employee, and therefore how you can help tweak your programs and really use that powerfully, use that stream of information to drive employee satisfaction and to better understand your own programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is not rocket science. This is so simple. Happy, satisfied employees reflect that satisfaction in every interaction that they have. So focusing on delivering great customer experience without concurrently focusing on delivering great employee experiences, it loses sight of the entire value proposition. It's such an important part of the equation. And I have so much respect for contact center agents. And, again, I said that, there's not a human being alive that wakes up thinking, I can't wait to reach out to a contact center agent. But think about when your job all day, every day is about solving problems. And the pressure that can, and you're talking with other human beings who are not having their best days. They're frustrated. They've tried probably to solve something for themselves and they can't, and all of that sort of thing. So I think that it's so important that we not lose sight of how important that employee experience part of the equation is. And it sounds like, you're actually working with customers to help them understand that and implement solutions and things like that, which I think is tremendously important.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point, right? Which is when we have, we look at voice of the employee across the org, but specifically to the example of the contact center role, it's an incredibly difficult role. And for those who are running contact centers, the recruitment process and the retention process, and think about this, is, and we do a lot of work here as well along the understanding the voice of the employee around how was the hiring experience? How did we onboard you? Was that training effective when we're talking contact center?
Right.
And what does it look like on a daily basis? And so that all of those examples they're natural moments in a employee's life cycle. And they're so very important to understanding how that employee, retaining that employee, how they will have a successful career with your organization. Right. And if you extract that back out for somebody who's running a contact center, the cost of hiring, of having high churn is enormous, right? It's something that really does keep contact center leader up at night. And so this is when we start digging into how can I predictively understand that satisfaction, because I've got these data points and their employee satisfaction, and therefore intervene so that I can, course correct as needed. It's a incredible, I think it's incredibly valuable for the employees as well as the organization, right? So
I'm with you 100%. Well, Sam, now let's dive a bit, if we could, into the platform story. So walk me through, if you would, what Verint's CX automation platform actually does and how it goes beyond the traditional survey tools that we've talked about previously.
Yeah. So good question once again. And really at the core, CX automation is about brands continuously improving and orchestrating customer journeys.
Right.
And so it's not just about the measurement, and it's not about the measurement after the fact. It's that we want to be able to improve those experiences in the moment and efficiently, right? So we always have an eye towards how we can drive more efficiency for the organization alongside these experiences, because we all know, corporations don't have an open checkbook. They can't just hire en masse to solve for what might be some gaps in experiences. We have to be smarter about the way that we drive. We elevate customer experiences, and we look to operational efficiency. And so the Verint platform, to your question, is it's open and agnostic. It has 50 products that are specialized on delivering on specific automations for task automations, and most importantly, they work in harmony with each other to be able to orchestrate the steps in customer journeys as needed. So I won't go through 50 products, but
you know what? I want to stop you just one moment and I know what this means, but in case somebody listening doesn't, what do you mean when you say the Verint platform is open? I mean, that's a really big part of the overall value prop that Verint brings. So if you would touch on that for me for just a quick minute, that would be great.
Absolutely. And so what we recognize is that we need to be able to work alongside other technologies, and that there's not going to be a scenario where we don't need to either ingest data, to integrate into a third party like a CRM or a marketing platform, or Adobe Analytics, so that I'm getting my web analytics, et cetera, et cetera. So the notion is that the platform is open, that we can do all the things I just outlined, all the way into what has become such an important part for all of us in this landscape, which is LLMs as well, right? We will work with different models, and we like to say we'll meet you where you are.
Which is so important. I mean, when you make a decision to work with a vendor, it requires a certain leap of faith. But when that leap of faith doesn't require you to walk away from everything else that's in your technology stack and everything else that you and your team are familiar with and accustomed to and all that sort of thing, and really that welcoming of, integrations and things like that, I think is a really big deal.
It is a big deal. And, to further that thought, we also deliver in multiple modes. So we haven't said, as some organizations have, and it's different choices for different organizations, but we haven't said you have to deploy everything into the cloud. Yeah. We do support hybrid models, and that once again is part of that open mindset, which is we will support the ways in which you want to deploy. Yeah. And we understand that there's great complexity. This is not a simple, one solution. As I said, 50 different products looking to automate tasks across customer journeys and understand those and, understand satisfaction. Yeah. So the flexibility and the notion that we are not going to be the only one in your complex environment, I think is, part and parcel in the way in which we think about solving customer problems.
And I think part of that, you said this earlier, Sam, but meeting customers where they are is so compelling. And it's like, we're not going to, we realize this is scary, especially in this age of AI, right? And we realize that this can be intimidating and that you're putting your trust in us. And so we're not only going to meet you where you are, but whatever pace it is that you want to move forward at, we're ready to help you and be by your side. And I think that's really important too. And I think that gives customers, I was at the Verint event a couple of weeks ago and had the chance to speak with a number of customers. And that was something, across the board, that was something that they pointed to as being a really important part of the decision that they made to work with Verint, because they like the idea of someone meeting them where they are and not forcing them to move more quickly than they're ready to move. And I think that's important.
And it is important, and you probably heard at the event that we talk about delivering AI business outcomes in the now. Yeah. And that is rooted in the notion of, being able to start small, to your point. You don't need to start a project that's a 2-year project that's, transformational and ends up with maybe the results you want, maybe not the results you want in 2 years. We're really about looking at starting in a smaller proof point and then scaling from there. And we can do that with a lot of speed. And so, we've got a series of examples where, not more than examples, of customer stories where they are seeing the returns on those investments and then taking the next step in the journey, which is once again, what we think is the best way to deliver value for our customers in this context of AI in this new world where, as you said a little bit earlier, we're all learning, right? We're all learning. So
we're all learning, and we all learn at different speeds and all of that sort of thing. So I derailed you a little bit. We were talking about sort of specialized products and that sort of thing. I know that there are 6 portfolios that make up Verint's CX automation platform. Will you walk me through what those 6 portfolios are?
Absolutely. So we have on the open platform, we have channel automation and the desktop that, simply put, that's driving traffic across channels with the context and giving the agents a unified desktop. We have a self-service portfolio, which is really about smart virtual agents, the feed of knowledge into those virtual agents so that we can help, once again, personalize the interaction and that portion of the journey for a customer in that self-service world. Workforce engagement, the backbone of contact centers, being able to record, deliver quality, forecast and schedule, really the work engine of the ways in which contact centers can operate. Business analytics, we touched on it a little bit earlier. This is being able to understand through our analytical tools, text sources and voice sources so that we can get at that unstructured data. Voice of the customer, I think I've run through this, but this is, predictive models, multimodal surveys, and struggle detection from a behavioral standpoint. Sure. And then last but not least, co-pilot bots. And these are agent-assisted bots that, deliver on tasks like wrap up or next best action, and do so in combination so that we're driving at that efficiency, once again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier on. So when you think about this, once again, we will work alongside a series of technologies, but we deliver for clients CX automation through the portfolio I just mentioned, because we understand the interconnectedness and how these pieces marry together in an open platform. So.
Awesome. So you and I've talked before, Sam, about signal-driven intelligence. Can you share with us, with our audience, a little bit about what that means in practical terms?
Yeah. And I like that you said practical terms, right? Because this is using the series of signals, of pieces of data that live in the ecosystems to turn into customer feedback to then drive real-time actions. And
Right.
and that's what, where we're focused. Each capability builds upon the last, right? So I may understand sentiment in the chat. I may understand intent in the IVA, and I can bring those pieces together alongside a survey result where somebody may have given me an NPS score, right? And we're really using that VOC data to inform the actions, inform the automation, and we're doing that in real time. So when we talk about signal-driven intelligence, that's what we mean. We mean
Right.
bringing that together in practical terms, which is hard to do, right?
Sure.
Started with that. That's hard to do. So being able to unearth those understanding, those pieces of data, bring them together so that we can inform action is what we think about what we mean when we talk about signal-driven intelligence.
Well, and the whole key here is that real-time business is a complete and total game changer.
Correct.
Very, very cool. So Sam, we hear a lot today about CX automation platforms, and obviously you're biased, but what do you think differentiates Verint CX automation platform from the rest of the pack?
So our choice has been to move into the analytics space, effectively use AI. It was, a big part of our history, and we've continued to evolve. So it was a natural piece to have VOC analytics and to understand a broader set of data beyond the direct feedback you'll get in a survey.
Right.
And so the piece that has been a natural bend for us. And so it's differentiated because not all of our competitors have come into the space the same way we have, right? We grew up through an organization with best of breed survey technology that got married into a contact center technology. But really the differentiator has been in the last couple of years when we went and launched CX automation is that ability to move to action. And that's just in real time, as you said a moment ago, though, that's the real differentiator. So if I can get somebody, if I can understand an experience on a mobile app, on a website, and I can then understand something like continuous loop that somebody is doing with their mouse, and use that to trigger an event so that I might intervene and try to help them in the moment. Yeah. That's differentiated. And that is done because we understand the totality of that ecosystem, and we're able to obviously live and breathe in it. So the action part, I think, is huge. Something that we're really excited about as well is that our newer thinking about what we call voice of the silent. And so that's really being able to use survey technology to capture data. Once again, I mean, you can see the themes, right? Data that is available to us in events, in a stop-start, as you stop and start an event. Okay. And so really what that means is collection of survey data without a survey, without a survey completion. And so that allows us to reconstruct the voice of the silent and really get at this broader set of data that individuals are, that around individuals' habits, right? So really powerful to think about moving from sort of a, maybe a 10% response rate in a survey to having, a much broader set of data around all of that activity. So voice of the silent, really, really something that we're really excited about, and being able to capture that in a what we're calling a silent survey. So
I like it. Very cool. All right, Sam, now I'm going to hit you up for some real world customer examples or use cases. Let's talk, for example, about a digital journey. Say someone like me is shopping on a retail website. How does the Verint platform understand and intervene and play a role in that experience? And what kind of signals is the platform picking up on those digital interactions?
Yeah, great use case. And so let me start us off from the beginning, right? So we have the technology to be able to understand that behavior that's happening on the website. So you started your journey. We see through some of the signals that you're leaving that you're struggling, right? And so we capture that event as a struggle event, and then we determine, and we can do this at scale, what's going to be the next motion that we're going to take. How are we going to design that experience to be optimized? And in this case, I understand struggle. I then may point you to an interactive virtual agent, right? Different from a chatbot. It's got ongoing learning, powered by AI, understands intent. But this is just one possible, flow in the journey. In that, in moving to the IVA, I carry context. So I know that you were struggling with trying to put the item into your basket. And so now that intent and that context moves into the IVA. There's a two-way interaction. What we're always trying to do in these contexts is task completion, right? We're looking to deliver task completion with satisfaction at each part, in each step of the journey. So if we can do it through that interaction with the IVA, fantastic. If for some reason, as we see you go through the website, we understand you're a high value customer because we're carrying that context.
Sure.
We say, you know what, we'd like that individual to go directly into a white glove service into a contact center agent that will have an understanding of who this person is, what they've already done in terms of that journey, and will help them with their task and completing that task, which is the purchase of whatever that was in the basket, right?
Yeah.
So those are two great examples of where I've got behavioral data, I understand, and behavioral data, survey data that is in the self-service journey and into an assisted journey in the contact center that is powered by a different set of technology. But the understanding and the stringing together is really what I think is exciting and powerful. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, brands really need to understand that customers just want one thing.
Yeah.
I want to give you my money.
Yeah.
Yes. Right?
Right.
And
right.
So quit making it hard
Right.
for me to give you my money.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, for any retailers listening today, 2 ways that you make it harder for me to give you my money is when you offer me some kind of a discount that I have to sign up for, and I have to give, the names of all of my children. And, I'm exaggerating here, but you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You have to provide your phone number. You have to provide your email address. And then you have to go over and check your email for something that they're sending you. And then you have to, and it's just like, oh my God, why make this so complicated? Even worse is that when you go through that same sign up process and they text you back a code that you cannot copy, that you have to either write down, 13 letters or whatever. But my point is this: I abandoned so many potential purchases because I'm so irritated by those hoops that you're making me jump through. And, really, this is just about that one thing.
Right.
Let me give you my money in exchange for something that you're trying to sell me, and make it a wonderful experience. And we both win.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. And when you think about it, when, somebody's designing an experience, they are trying to make it the best experience they can. And yet we have friction and we have disappointment that happens in the example that you just gave. And so isn't it wonderful that we now are at a point where, because of the innovation of technology, because of the way that AI has come into our worlds, that I could understand that. So back to this notion of visibility and blind spots. I didn't know that you were having, a terrible time doing X, Y, and Z. Now I can know. Now I can, I just spoke about a silent survey. This notion of there's a big pocket of the population that tried to do X and that didn't work. Let me dig into that. Let me figure it out. Let me prioritize and prove the experience and the workflow that is underneath that, right? And so critical to a lot of organizations we're working with are they're not only thinking about this, they want to deliver on those brand promises and do so effectively on all the channels.
Yeah.
And so it's going to continue to evolve and get better and better. But now we have this incredibly powerful tool and a set of tools in our hands that is, we can better understand this than we ever have before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think probably one of the things that I regularly think to myself is that all of the people who are designing these workflows need to go through the process as a customer.
Right.
Because you can tell when that's not happening, when you get hung up in the ways that I've gotten hung up. And it's such a simple thing, but it's like, so for anyone in retail who's listening and who's charged with creating user experiences and that sort of thing, please just take a moment, go through them yourself, and you'll find the problem areas. I promise you, it's not that hard.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, Sam, this has been amazing. I could talk to you forever, obviously. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap. So as we wrap this episode, will you leave our listeners with your thoughts on what success looks like here in terms of like what outcomes should organizations expect from a CX automation provider platform? And also maybe leave us with any final advice for folks trying to get their arms around best-in-class enterprise CX.
Yeah. So let me think about that a little bit. So I think, the understanding of where the interaction is starting is hyper important. And so, thinking about the whoever you're going to work with and whether or not they can, both from a services aspect and from a technology platform aspect, understand that totality, that it isn't, we talked about, silos of data. Well, silos of data sometimes happens because we've got multiple solutions that may or may not be talking to each other, right? So having a service provider, platform provider that understands that there are multiple entry points to the interaction and multiple exit points, and that ultimately you want to understand task completion at everything that is around task completion, I think is critical. And that's really about, once again, if you take that one step further, it's about understanding what CX indicator you're going to use and what, that's a choice you make, NPS, CSAT, effort, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And in doing all of that, the underlying principle, as far as I'm concerned, is frictionless, right? It's effort and friction, and making sure that you can minimize or eliminate them, and understand how you're measuring, what your indicator is to measure that, and then go one step further into the process. So to your question, it's about making sure that you can layer into the platform those notions of measurement and understanding through, as we talked about before, friction, et cetera.
That makes perfect sense. And I will add that my advice is look for the vendor who will meet you where you are. Who doesn't require you to pick up everything and move everything to their platform. The open part of the Verint platform is incredibly appealing. And I think that that's something that you really need to pay a lot of attention to before you make these decisions. But really, someone who meets you where you are and walks with you shoulder to shoulder as you go on this journey, I think that takes the stress of making this decision. It lessens the stress of making this decision and really sets you on the path to some pretty speedy results. And then you're a hero.
Well, I couldn't put it better. Really and truly, you've captured delivering AI business outcomes in the now, being able to do it with a partner, being able to do it in an environment that is open and therefore reflective of what most organizations face in terms of complexity, and looking to do that, as we said earlier, in the section of the journey where you are. So, thank you for that.
Of course. Well, my friends, that is it for this episode of Experience Matters. Thanks so much to my guest, Samantha McDougall, VP and GM, Voice of Customer Solutions at Verint, for joining me today for a dive into the competitive advantage that enterprise CX can deliver and the role that customer analytics solutions and analytics can play to help measure customer engagement and the role that all of this can play in driving significant enterprise-wide value. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer&Co. And thanks to our audience for joining us today. Thanks again to you, Sam, and we'll see you here again next time.